Hello, everybody, and this is the second semifinals series, this time between CombatDisc and Rampage. Both players having a hard-fought battle to get here. I believe CombatDisc here in the top left fought Nimtidum in order to get to the semifinals round, and here in the bottom right, Rampage fought Race. As I remember, both games going 2-1, so very close games. All of these players have had a hard-fought journey to the semifinals, and we will have to see how they fare getting into the later stages of this tournament. I do want to say, in our last series between ESC and oh gosh, why can I not remember this? Yeah, in our last series between EXE and Herald, that was a very entertaining series, extremely enjoyable to watch. If you have not seen those games, go watch it right now. Very hilarious, very well played games. It went the distance. All 5 games out of the best of 5, and quite possibly the most entertaining games of this entire tournament. Certainly we can hope that other games will reach that level of competitiveness and entertainment, but truly those games will be tough to match. My God, watching those two play was pure joy. So now we have Rampage and CombatDisc here, also known as Dirty Harry. CombatDisc going the purple armed commander. I believe he started K-Bot first, but quickly went into vehicles. And in the bottom right, Rampage, the green armed commander, who is still on K-Bots only. Interesting choice for CombatDisc to go vehicle second. He went vehicle very quickly, and apparently thought he would have the economy to support both factories at once. Certainly, just looking at his medal, he is supporting it. I mean, he has been able to make this work. He is not nano stalling at this point, so perhaps that was a good decision. And here in the bottom right, Rampage now finally going vehicle second, so both players kind of mirroring each other's strategy. And now it will come down to skill, which player can utilize and execute the K-Bot / vehicle combo better than their opponent. They are both ARM. They both have the same technology. It really boils down to who can micro and expand better than their opponent. All other things being equal, we will have to see. Here we go. Not too much going on so far. Typically in the early game of escalation, there are some raiding attempts. These raiding attempts, whether by Pee-wees or Jeffies or Flashes, can end the game. If they are successful enough, they can give the player a massive advantage, which will ultimately snowball into a victory. But both players doing a fairly good job so far of halting these advances and preventing these raids from getting too much accomplished. But as I say that, CombatDisc coming down through the southernmost portion of the map with a quite large contingent of flashes. There looks to be at least a dozen here. And will they sneak by Rampage's defenses? He doesn't seem to have seen them yet. But now he does. And he will send his army of peewees and flashes to stop that. So, great job by Rampage countering that. And again, we will kind of get back to a place of parity, I think. CombatDisc not able to get too much accomplished there. But now Rampage doing a similar thing with this small fleet of Jeffies, which will attempt to drive past this recently completed light laser turret and will be thwarted, be pushed back, and not much getting done. Blood Red Sky, I think just because of the nature of the layout of this map with all the craggy regions and mountainous terrain, is a bit easier to defend than, like, say, a flat moon map or a flat metal map might be. And because of that, in past games on this map, it does tend to be that players have a tough time raiding too much at the beginning, but CombatDisc, bypassing the terrain completely with these bombers and demonstrating some very proficient line bombing skills. It's tough to say how many metal extractors he took out there with that run, but probably at least half a dozen. So very heads-up play there by CombatDisc with that bombing run, and he is going to follow it up with a veritable army of flashes here. It does look like to be at least 20. They are going to stream into Rampage's base, coming in at every angle that they can, and will they get anything accomplished? That's the question. Yeah, CombatDisc having done a great job here between these bombing runs and these flash raids, taking out all the juicy metal extractors, certainly putting Rampage behind on economy. I think, yeah, CombatDisc definitely ahead. He is on about 50 metal per second now to Rampage's 18. And this is looking a bit dire now for Rampage. That successful bombing run, all it really took was about 3 thunders. And this took out enough metal extractors combined with a successful flash raid to put Rampage quite far behind. And in the meantime, it does look as though CombatDisc now heading to T2 K-Bots, no doubt will be investing in some Mavericks soon after he completes that factory. So very well played so far. Here in the middle, just an engagement between flashes, peewees, and other flashes. And CombatDisc heading down the east side of the map with his own little contingent of flashes. Going to see if he can get some more economic damage done. And perhaps we'll take out this metal extractor. Maybe. No, he doesn't get it. Doesn't look like he got much done there. But at the same time, Rampage also not getting much done either. Here in the east portion of CombatDisc's base. Some peepers. Dirty Harry building some peepers to see what they can see. Keep an eye on his opponent and try to find out what he's doing. But overall, CombatDisc now on 64, almost 65 metal per second, and Rampage on 20. I have to say that CombatDisc is way ahead. CombatDisc also on T2 now, pumping out Mavericks as I predicted earlier. And this is just going to solidify his lead even further. Just looking at the map, you can kind of see that CombatDisc's tentacles are slowly protruding out all over the map. And Rampage struggling to leave this tiny little southeastern corner of the red planet. Here we go. Rampage pushing into CombatDisc's base with this group of flashes. We'll have to see how much they can get done here. They might take out some solar collectors. But there are a lot of defenses between them and Dirty Harry's production line. They are kind of making a beeline into the heart of his base. But there is a Maverick here to stop them, and they are unlikely to get much done against that Maverick. In the meantime, in the bottom right, CombatDisc doing his own raid into the heart of Rampage's base. Rampage just now starting his T2 K-Bot lab. And, yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to complete it in time, because CombatDisc sending an endless wave of flashes and Mavericks into his base is going to make it very difficult to complete. Rampage way behind on economy. He is just making 23 metal per second to CombatDisc's nearly 70 metal per second. So at this point, I just don't really see how Rampage gets back into this game. CombatDisc so far ahead, both in terms of economy and technology. At this point, now building some T2 construction K-bots, and they will no doubt begin to convert these metal extractors to moho mines, which will only solidify his economic lead over his opponent and cause this game to be tilted even further into his favor. Rampage does finish the advanced K-Bot lab, which I was a little unsure about whether he would be able to do earlier, and he will begin to produce Mavericks, but is it too little, too late? CombatDisc now coming in from every side, collapsing on to Rampage. Let's go to Rampage's view here. Where's his commander? Yeah, Rampage just going to call GG, well played. And yeah, Control D out of there. So not too much to say about that game. CombatDisc just with the better control. And let's go on to game 2. Okay, this is game 2 versus CombatDisc in the top left. The purple core commander going shipyard first versus Rampage, the white arm commander going shipyard first. And again, very orthodox starts here. Both players do have other options. They can go hovercraft. I believe they can also go seaplane. But certainly shipyards being the default option for a essentially water-only map. To do anything else first is risky. Ships, certainly the rulers of the sea, typically they will win direct engagements with any kind of dual nature unit like a hovercraft or an amphibious vehicle or K-bot. So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary here. Starting shipyard first. Interesting choice for CombatDisc to go core on this map. I have to say, in terms of the faction differences between ARM and core, as it pertains to their naval options, is almost insignificant. ARM and core at T1 have basically the exact same units in their naval yards. They're almost completely equivalent. There are some differences in the T1 vehicles and K-bots and aircraft units, I think. But in terms of shipyard, I believe they are essentially identical in what they can build at T1. Now, when you get to T2 ships, their tech trees begin to diverge a little bit. And then once you get to T3 naval warfare, the diverge becomes even more pronounced. But here at T1, again, I don't see much of a difference between ARM and core in terms of their technology. This should be almost exactly the same. They will likely be building the same units, the scouts, the Skeeter and the Searcher, and then the escort frigates or the missile frigates, and the destroyers, the Enforcer and the Crusaders, and also some submarines as well, probably. But all these units almost clones of one another. So again, I'm not sure why CombatDisc decided to go core first. Maybe just trying to mix it up, but ultimately it might not make too big of a difference in terms of how this game plays out. Here we just have a battle of scouts. The Searcher versus Skeeter. They do just have these short-range combat lasers. As I mentioned in previous casts, the missiles that they did have in the original game have been removed. So quite a bit less overpowered than they were in the original game. But nonetheless, they are still usually built en masse at the start. And, let's see. Yeah, CombatDisc almost losing a construction ship there, but he does manage to save it. And, yeah, here come these vanguards. These are the escort frigates that I mentioned earlier. Typically, these will be the transition, the second type of unit built once the game evolves past the scout ships. They will evolve into the escort frigates, the missile frigates. So, yep, Rampage making that transition first. And these vanguards will quite easily clean up these Searchers, and so I fully expect CombatDisc to now start producing his own escort frigates. And yes, we do see that here, these Vikings being the core equivalent to the vanguards. We are now at the next tier of technology. We'll have to see if either player wants to build a submarine. In the game, I cast between EXE and Herald. That single submarine won EXE the game. Just a single submarine could make the difference between victory and defeat. But a very well-placed Thunderbolt here by CombatDisc, getting a few shots off and certainly giving him the advantage in this fight, in this particular engagement. Let's see here. They look to be about equal. Perhaps CombatDisc might have a few more missile frigates. But they're about even on this. Let's see what they're doing in their base. Rampage built 2 submarines here. These escort frigates have no sub-defense. They have no depth charges. They have no torpedoes. In fact, I don't even think they have sonar at all, so they couldn't even see these submarines. So these submarines will be able to to chew through these Vikings with impunity if they can get in range. The Vikings having no countermeasures to detect submarines. In fact, the Vikings having no ability to even see them at all. And so therefore, if Rampage can use these 3 submarines effectively, it may give him a huge advantage in these combat situations, or he could completely avoid the battle and just go into the heart of Dirty Harry's base and attempt to dismantle his structural economy and production. Here in the top, Rampage making a push. CombatDisc making a push into Rampage's base. But it does seem as though they have a similar number of missile frigates, and this single lurker, as I mentioned before, will destroy these Vikings with absolute impunity. The Vikings have no way to respond. Wow. Holy cow, Rampage has a lot of submarines here. 5 making their way into CombatDisc's base. Now, CombatDisc does build a Cormorant here. Cormorant is a escalation exclusive unit. It is a depth charge gunship, so it will fly above the water and drop these depth charges into the water until they kill their target. The subs have no countermeasures against this. They have no way to fire at air units, and so this is a very effective counter to submarines, given that the submarines simply cannot respond and will eventually succumb to that constant pressure. So it does look like Rampage, with a very good idea here, sending these submarines, but ultimately not getting too much accomplished. It does look like CombatDisc was prepared with these Cormorants. At least that's the... Let me see. Slow it down here. Yeah, that's what they're called, Cormorants. And these will clean up the submarines without too much trouble. So very heads-up play there to go for the seaplane platform. And I don't even think that Rampage... Oh yeah, he does have his own seaplane platform. And now building freedom fighters, I believe. Yeah, building some freedom fighters. So that will allow him to combat these Cormorants, gain control of the skies. As I've mentioned in previous casts, it is very important to have air dominance, and it looks like Rampage will demonstrate that in this game. He is going to slowly take out all those Cormorants with his little fleet of freedom fighters there. So, yeah, both players building very effective counters to what their opponents are doing. CombatDisc massing missile frigates, Rampage countering with submarines, CombatDisc countering with Cormorants, and finally Rampage countering with freedom fighters, in which case CombatDisc may counter with the anti-air. Yes, he is, the Corsairs. So a game of counters, players just kind of feinting and parrying everything their opponents do. And Rampage does seem to be ahead in this particular game, just looking at the amount of surface area that he has taken over on the map. I would say that he has gleaned an advantage. How much of an advantage, I don't know. Let's take a look here. He's got a lot of tidal generators. These will produce a huge amount of power. And he is on advanced ships now, so he will be producing T2 ships. And I don't think I have to say that T2 ships are very, very strong. Also, he has a small squadron of Zephyrs here, which is the ARM version. of the depth charge gunship, and he's going to take them to the bottom left. But CombatDisc prepared with a small group of Avengers, and the players are going to duke it out there in the air. Again, I don't think that CombatDisc is on T2 yet. Am I wrong? I don't see it in Advanced Shipyard, so Rampage, once he starts producing T2 Executioners, I think that's what it's called, the T2 Destroyer. Or no, maybe it's called a cruiser. Or even T2 submarines. Either way, once he starts producing T2 combat ships, he should get a huge advantage in these battles. But maybe he won't even need to. These Crusaders doing great work on their own. A combination of Crusaders and Lurkers will easily chew through these Vikings. No problem. And yeah, I do have to give the advantage to Rampage here. Showing some aerial dominance in this game. He's going to slowly float on into this tiny fortified position with an Urchin and a Thunderbolt. But these Crusaders should quite easily clean that up. And is Rampage going to start building some Executioners? We haven't seen any yet. He's building Archers, which is the ARM T2 anti-air ship. They are even more effective against air than the ARM equivalent to the Corsairs, which are already very effective against aircraft. Here in the top left, Rampage bringing another squad of Cormorants to try to get some economic harassment done. Taking out a construction ship, taking out underwater metal extractors. Might take out the shipyard. Very effective harassment there. Again, like I said before, Cormorants and Zephyrs are a TA escalation exclusive unit. These T1 gunship depth charge seaplanes were not available. They did not exist in the original game, so again, a very flavorful addition to the Total Annihilation universe. Certainly very interesting to watch, and they add a lot of dynamic and diversity to the repertoire of the skilled player that will put these things into action. So, great job there. I gotta say, I'm surprised that Rampage is still just building these Archers. Of course, Archers do have depth charges, so they're not useless against the water, but I do feel like Executioners might be a more effective option against what he's facing, but he may not need it. It does seem as though with these Zephyrs, these depth charge gunships, he is already doing quite a bit of work, and yeah, CombatDisc kind of realizing he's so far behind with this constant harassing and raiding, and with his opponent being on a higher tier of technology, recognizing that it's only a matter of time and bowing out. So, great job there. The series now 1-1. CombatDisc 1 game and Rampage 1 game, and we will move on to Game 3. Okay, welcome to Game 3 of Rampage versus CombatDisc. Rampage here in this very feminine, bright pink color. The Corps Commander going vehicle first. He has kind of boxed himself in here. He's made a veritable safe room of metal extractors, solar collectors, and a dragon's tooth. I don't really know why. I'm not sure what the benefit of doing this is. Perhaps the benefit is to prevent his commander from walking around, therefore he can build things more quickly if his commander isn't trying to get in position to build, but is just kind of forced to stay within his range. But either way, he's going to reclaim that Dragon's Tooth, and kind of an interesting start, I guess. But again, core vehicle first is Rampage, and in the top right of the purple combat disc going Arm K-Bot first. We have now casted this map twice in this tournament. Both games very exciting. This map does tend to lead to longer, more macro-oriented, high-tier technology games with T3 units galore. Hopefully we'll get some of that in this game. Certainly here in the escalation community, we will not turn our nose up at longer macro-oriented games full of high-tech units with the huge explosions and chaotic battles and epic scenes of Michael Bay movies to boot. So absolutely, we do hope and pray for those kinds of games on this particular map. Now, as I've said before on Artificial Hills, taking the middle is very important because these metal spots will allow you to gain a huge economic advantage over your opponent. You can place a moho on these spots and get both of them at once, which will give you a huge amount of metal per second. I don't know how much, but certainly this map could be called King of the Hill because taking the middle portion of the map will certainly give you such an immense advantage over your opponent that it could outright win you the game. But certainly we have seen some pretty epic battles over this middle island in previous games, and we will have to see how these players want to tackle that particular problem and see which one of them claims the island first. I do tend to call that taking first blood. Whoever claims the island first takes first blood on Artificial Hills. So we will have to see which player, being the bold conqueror and making that move first. As I say that, CombatDisc sending a single bomber down to get some harassment done. We'll have to see what he can take out. 1 metal extractor, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yikes, that is so devastating. 7, 8, 9, 10 metal extractors for a single bomber. I'd say that was a very efficient trade. 10 metal extractors for a single thunder. You know, he is laughing all the way to the bank. Very efficient line bombing run there by CombatDisc. Of course, nothing out of the ordinary for players of this caliber, and certainly that has caught Rampage off guard. A single pulverizer could have prevented at least some of that damage. Yeah, one missile tower probably not going to stop it completely, but he didn't have any air defense at all, and will pay for that in spades. Here at the top, little skirmish between flashes and instigators, but doesn't look like much is going to get accomplished by Rampage, as CombatDisc will push away this small raiding force. And I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that given that extremely successful bombing run a few minutes earlier, CombatDisc is ahead in this part of the game. But of course, it is by no means over. Both players still firmly in this game, still vying for dominance, and right now it is just a land grab. Both players going to attempt to take as much of this metal-rich map as they can to give them the resources to build their war machine and outproduce their opponent. Here at the top right, CombatDisc on 2 vehicle plants, 1 aircraft plant, and a K-bot lab. See if there's anything else. And another vehicle plant here. So 5 factories producing. And in the bottom, his opponent Rampage on 3 vehicle plants. And that might be it. So certainly CombatDisc having a larger production force here, certainly going to be pumping out more units. Just looking at the mega map, this is very apparent. And given CombatDisc's early performance, not too unexpected that he would be able to have a production advantage over his opponent. So we'll have to see what he can do with this advantage. This could turn into a similar scenario as Game 1, where CombatDisc, given some of his successful harassment with bombing and raiding, gleans a powerful early game advantage over Rampage, and then translates this advantage into a never-ending wave of pressure that Rampage will eventually crumble under. We will have to see if Rampage can hold back this unstoppable tide of flashes streaming into his base and withstand the withering pressure that CombatDisc will continue to apply, no doubt, throughout this game. CombatDisc now on 2 vehicle plants here, and plus the 2 in his base, and also going into advanced K-bots. So CombatDisc, in addition to applying this steady stream of pressure, which is just harassing his opponent, it does look like he's taken out all the metal extractors of Rampage up here, is now teching to Tier 2. I have to say, CombatDisc is very, very good at applying pressure on his opponent, while also increasing his own technological advantage and structural advantage. I'd say that's one of his skills as a player. He can kind of walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, if you'd like me to use an alliteration. He's very good at both keeping his opponent under pressure while not falling behind on his technology or his economy, which makes it very difficult to beat him, because as you're struggling just to defend your base and reestablish all of your raided economy, he will be teching up to higher and higher tiers of technology, which will put you further and further behind as he continues to gain an economic advantage over you. And it does look as though, let's see, he had some atlases earlier. Where did those go? Here they are. He brought these atlases down, filled them with Mavericks, and he's going to transport a small squad of Mavericks here into the northwestern quarter of Rampage's base, and these Mavericks are going to absolutely wreak havoc on Rampage's economy. Again, it is so hard to face Dirty Harry, because he is just so good at keeping constant pressure on his opponent, as I said, while also teching up to higher tiers of technology. These Mavericks, very successful. Oh man, this one Maverick might just take out every single one of these solar collectors. Yikes. And finally Rampage bringing down some Reapers to stop this Maverick, but I'd say the damage is already done. This looking very much like Game 1. Again, CombatDisc very good at putting on that early game pressure, getting an economic lead and then just relentlessly pursuing that lead and pressuring his opponent until they absolutely crumble. And yeah, Rampage certainly a victim to that in this game. Let's just look at the economy here. CombatDisc on 110 metal per second to Rampage's 50, so he is making over twice as much metal per second. As I say that, Rampage is attempting to take control of the mid, but these three Mavericks of Dirty Harry should quite easily clean up all of these instigators. A lot of talk in the Discord about Mavericks being too powerful, and certainly against T1 spam, they absolutely dominate. And are almost unstoppable by any T1 unit. So, Rampage in a lot of trouble, guys. Very, very far behind here. Reapers are a good counter to Mavericks. I do have to say they do perform well against Mavericks in general. But the problem is it too little too late? Rampage so far behind on economy now. And CombatDisc having so much more of the map. Still continuing to fly in units in these Atlas drops. Here we go. Probably going to drop off a few more Mavericks. Yes, it does. And yeah, while CombatDisc distracts Rampage here in the bottom, he will simultaneously push him in the top left and make it into the heart of Rampage's base with these few Mavericks, and they will likely destroy so much of Rampage's economy that Rampage might just surrender here. It's certainly looking very grim, and I'm sure Rampage not enjoying the situation that he has found himself in at the moment. And now down to 35 metal per second to CombatDisc's 122. So yeah, I think Rampage at this point probably just trying to gain some composure. He has sent a few Reapers up to the top here. And, you know, they haven't done bad. They've taken out some metal extractors. But they will probably be cleaned up sooner or later. And in the meantime, CombatDisc still continuing to send down a endless wave of flashes into his opponent's base. And, yeah, I don't really know what Rampage does here. Certainly he has a lot of metal corpses to reclaim, and it does look like he is reclaiming those to some degree, and that will give him a bit of a boost in metal income, but unfortunately I just don't know if it's going to be enough. Reapers are very good against flashes, and they will push off these flashes at least for now. But again, this withering pressure may prove to be too much. And let's see what CombatDisc is doing at his base. Building some bombers. I think that's a good choice here. I think Rampage devoting all of his resources to defending against the constant harassment of flashes and Mavericks. Probably not going to have much left over for air defense. He only has a few defenders. So a few bombers could quite easily win the game. And CombatDisc asking where his base is. Yeah. Very strange question. Very odd that CombatDisc doesn't know where his base is. They both start at approximately the same part of the map. Just mirrored, right? CombatDisc and Rampage will start approximately at the opposite end of the map. So he should have a pretty good idea of where his opponent is. And here we go. Here are those aforementioned bombers coming in to most likely finish off the game. Let's see what they can do here. No, they didn't get too much done there. These three or so, well, I guess there's, 3 or 4 defenders were able to stop that push. But more bombers are coming, and it looks as though these bombers will probably focus down the advanced vehicle plant and the resource generator, which is probably the only things keeping Rampage in this game. Flashes continuing to stream through the east side of Rampage's base. Mavericks coming in from the north side. Panthers also here. And Rampage now in a very dire situation. His commander's still living. But, yeah, he will self-destruct there, I think. And very good game. But as I said before, I think CombatDisc very good at applying pressure early on with his raiding and his bombers. And then once he gets an economic advantage, he will continue to apply pressure while he slowly advances to these higher tiers of technology, which will allow him to apply more pressure with higher tier units, in this case Mavericks, and then also gain an even higher economic advantage with the Moho metal extractors and resource generators and what have you, and it just kind of snowballs out of control. So Dirty Harry having a very snowball-y type of playstyle that some have said that Dirty Harry is the strongest TA escalation player. Certainly Postal and some of his TA escalation casts has made that claim that that CombatDisc is the player to beat in the escalation community, and we can see why. He is quite formidable indeed, and we will have to see whether Rampage can come back. This fourth game will be game point. Rampage will have to win 2 games from this position in order to defeat Dirty Harry and move on to the finals. So, yeah, let's watch the next game and see what happens. Okay, this is the 4th game between Rampage, here in the top left, the pink arm commander, going K-Bot first, and CombatDisc, the purple arm commander, also going K-Bot first. And this is on a map called Cedrana, which is a Mars map, mostly flat, as opposed to Blood Red Sky, which is another Mars map, which has a lot of mountainous type of hilly regions that make the games a little harder to a little harder to raid your opponent's base. There are some bones on this map, some little dinosaur bones. This might be an alternate universe where Mars has fossils, dinosaur fossils. This looks like a Stegosaurus. I don't know that there was ever a Stegosaurus on Mars, but Race, who created this map, says it's my universe. I will add dinosaurs if I want. In my headcanon, dinosaurs were on Mars. So, yeah, very interesting to see skeletal corpses here. They are worth a little bit of metal, not too much. Those fossil fuels might give players a bit of an advantage. This one worth about 300 metal. So, quite impressive. We'll have to see if Rampage wants to reclaim this and give himself an early boost. But both players, it looks like, just starting with Pee-wees. And CombatDisc doing his trademarked vehicle plant second, so he tends to build both factories very early on, and then he kind of gets the benefit of both vehicles and K-bots, which do both have their own respective advantages and disadvantages. So having both at once will certainly give CombatDisc an advantage in terms of unit composition. Rampage having built a light laser tower here at the top right to push off this Jeffy aggression, and we'll have to see if it works. Yeah, Rampage seeing these Jeffys building a defender, which, as I've said before, defenders are pretty good against scouts because they are long range and they do enough damage to eventually push these scouts away. But CombatDisc very wisely avoiding the range of those defensive turrets and will kind of skirt around here, taking out a couple of metal extractors. Very annoying, certainly, for Rampage to deal with. And in the meantime, CombatDisc sending up a force of Peewees and Flashes through the western part of the map. He will get this metal extractor, and let's see, near the northwest, near the heart of Rampage's base. He might get a little bit more, but the commander is here. He'll take out one metal extractor. Commander getting some D-gun action in here. That looks like it. He got one metal extractor. Nothing too devastating, and he will leave a few corpses behind to give Rampage an economic boost. But in the meantime, pushing through the northeast portion of the map as well, and taking out all the defenses here, taking out several metal extractors. Man, it is tough, I think, to defend against all of CombatDisc's relentless pressure. It's just tough to have defenses everywhere. It kind of feels like you have to build light laser towers all over the map to stop this aggression, and it's just not really economically feasible to do that. Yeah, CombatDisc kind of with the philosophy of the best defense is a good offense, constantly keeping his opponents on their toes, preventing them from even doing raiding of their own because he is just in their base all the time, keeping that pressure on their economy and forcing them to react while he slowly techs up and expands his own economy. As I said before, it is tough to play against someone this aggressive. It is very difficult in Total Annihilation to defend all of your base, especially on these open maps, because these metal extractors are quite vulnerable, quite easily killed. Just about anything can kill them within a few seconds, if even that. Sometimes they'll just die within a split second. So very vulnerable and very difficult to protect, especially if your opponent is coming at them from all directions and bringing bombers in as well. And through the left side of the map, CombatDisc will skirt past Rampage's commander here and kill some solar collectors, and maybe this LLT here. I do have to say, the one game that Rampage did really well was on that water map, that water-only map, where it is much more difficult to raid your opponent's base because all of your metal extractors are underwater, and the raiding type ships do not have the ability to kill those because they don't have any type of depth charges. So the skeeters and the support frigates or the missile frigates can't harass your opponent's economy very easily. Rampage did a lot better on those games because I think he was able to combat CombatDisc on even footing, on an even economy. We saw that Rampage certainly knows his counters. He knows what to build, has a very good game sense. But on these land-only maps, it is difficult, I think, for any player to react and defend against this constant pressure, which Dirty Harry is so efficient at putting on. As I said, in Total Annihilation on the original engine, it is much easier to harass than it is to defend. It is much easier to put pressure on your opponent than it is to defend pressure. And that is just, there's a few reasons for that. Number one, there isn't really a feature that allows you to chase units very effectively. All you can really do, you can't just have your army follow a group of units and kill them. You have to manually micro your units to follow them. And so the player that is defending has to commit a lot more actions per minute to chase a raiding force than does the player sending the raiding force. So the player that is sending the raiding force can just kind of cue movement commands all over the map and then forget about it, while the player defending has to actively follow the units that are raiding, which requires a lot more time and micro and effort investment. And so, for example, on engines like on newer engines like Spring, defending becomes much more easier because you can actually you can click on your opponent's radar blips, and your units will actually follow them around, so you don't have to micro them manually to follow them around. Your units can actually chase units with just a single click. Essentially, you don't have to engage in any spurious micro. So on the TA escalation, I mean on the original TA engine, which escalation uses, being aggressive is much easier, requires much less micro than being defensive, just because of the way the game is structured. And so CombatDisc, very good at that. I mean, he puts his opponent in kind of a impossible position of always defending everything, all of the attacks and raiding that he's doing, while never really giving them a chance to do their own raiding. And CombatDisc moving on to the finals against Harold. And we will have to see what Harold can do against this playstyle. Harold, in previous games that I've casted with him, a much more kind of balanced player. He does tend to play a little more of a somewhat aggressive and defensive playstyle. You know, like I said, more of a balanced, dynamic playstyle, where Dirty Harry is extremely aggressive and seems to be aggressive on every map. And so we will have to see if Harold can find a way to curtail this endless withering aggression and stay in the game, or perhaps get his own raiding done against Dirty Harry. This has been a very dominant performance. But either way, some very interesting games, and we're excited to see the finals, guys. So in the finals, it will be Harold versus CombatDisc, and in the losers finals, which is determining third and fourth place, it will be EXE versus Rampage. So those are the last two series of the tournament. When they are released, I will cast them. When those games are played, I will cast them and then upload them to YouTube. But either way, some great games between these two, and we look forward to seeing the finals, hopefully within the next few days. And thank you for watching.